Hi, you're listening to Insight Avenue. If you've been waiting for happiness to arrive someday, this episode may quietly change the way you see everything. Most people don't feel unhappy because their life is terrible. They feel unhappy because they're always waiting for things to improve, waiting for someone to choose them, waiting for the moment when life finally feels lighter. And while they wait, years pass. If you're honest, ask yourself this. What are you still waiting for before you allow yourself to feel okay? Pause for a second, then tell me in the comments. This episode is not about pretending everything is fine. It's about understanding why happiness keeps feeling just out of reach, even when you're doing your best. What you're about to hear is not motivation built on fantasy. It's about how the mind actually works, how habits quietly shape emotions, and why happiness is not a reward at the end of life, but a skill practiced inside it. As you listen, your English will improve naturally through real thoughts and real emotion. So don't rush. Stay with me, because this might be the moment you stop waiting and start living. Most people believe happiness is something that happens after life improves, after the money comes, after the relationship works, after the pressure disappears. That belief sounds harmless, but it quietly traps people in waiting mode. Because if happiness only comes later, then right now must be endured. Right now becomes a place to survive, not a place to live. Here is the shift most people never learn. Happiness is not a result, it is a skill. And like every skill, it follows the same rule. What you practice, you become better at. Your mind is not neutral. It is always training. If you rehearse frustration every day, your brain becomes fluent in frustration. If you replay regrets every night, your mind learns how to live in the past. If you expect disappointment, your nervous system prepares for loss before it even arrives. This doesn't happen because you're weak. It happens because repetition rewires the brain. The same mechanism works in the opposite direction. When you practice noticing small moments of relief, your mind becomes better at spotting them. When you slow down long enough to feel one calm breath, your body remembers safety. When you interrupt harsh thoughts instead of believing them, your inner world softens. Nothing magical happens. No sudden joy appears, but something important changes. Your mind stops fighting itself all day. Think of happiness like learning an instrument. At first, the movements feel awkward. Your fingers don't listen. The sound is messy. If you stop there, you'll say, I'm just not musical. But if you stay, if you practice a little each day, something shifts. Your hands learn the language. What felt unnatural becomes automatic. Happiness works the same way. Many people say, I'm just not a happy person. What they really mean is, I was never taught how to train my mind. That's not a personal failure. It's a missing education. You were taught how to work, how to perform, how to push, but no one taught you how to rest your attention, how to guide your thoughts, how to build peace from the inside. So when life becomes heavy, your system does what it knows. It tightens, it worries, it waits. The moment you understand happiness as a skill, something releases. Because skills can be learned, and anything learned can improve. You don't need to feel joyful today. You don't need to fake gratitude. You don't need to convince yourself that everything is fine. You only need to practice one small shift. Stop treating happiness as a future reward and start treating it as a daily mental habit. Not because life is easy, but because your mind deserves training, not punishment. This is where real happiness begins. Not when circumstances change, but when you stop outsourcing peace to a future that never arrives. And from here, everything else becomes possible. One of the most common reasons people lose happiness is not failure, pain, or bad luck. It's comparison. The quiet kind that slowly changes how you see your own life. It happens without warning. You scroll through your phone, hear about someone else's success, or notice how fast others seem to be moving forward. And almost immediately, your mind begins to measure their progress against your pace, their results against your effort, their highlight moments against your ordinary days. Over time, this comparison creates a dangerous illusion that everyone else is ahead and you are falling behind. But what you're really doing is comparing two things that were never meant to be compared. You compare your behind-the-scenes struggles with someone else's public image. You compare your uncertainty with their confidence. You compare your real life with a carefully edited version of theirs. And then you judge yourself as if that comparison were fair. It isn't. Every person is walking through life with a different history, a different set of responsibilities, and a different kind of pressure. Some carry visible weight. Others carry pain you'll never see. But comparison ignores all of that and convinces you there is only one timeline, one correct speed, and one version of success. When you don't match it, your mind doesn't say, "This path is different." It says, "Something is wrong with me." This is where happiness starts to disappear, not because your life is empty, but because you stop recognizing its value. Happy people are not blind to other people's achievements. They simply refuse to turn someone else's journey into a judgment of their own. They understand that progress is not about position, it's about direction. It's not about being faster than others. It's about moving honestly forward. Instead of asking, "Why them and not me?" they ask a quieter, more useful question. What is my next step? When comparison loosens its grip, something inside you relaxes. Your breathing slows. Your attention returns. You stop performing for an invisible scoreboard and start noticing your own growth again. The patience you're building. The resilience you're earning. The effort you're still showing up with. And here is the truth most people need to hear. You are not behind. You are in your season. When you stop comparing, happiness doesn't become loud or dramatic. It becomes steady. It settles into your life naturally, because for the first time, you are no longer living someone else's timeline. You are finally living your own. There is a voice inside your mind that never leaves. It speaks when you wake up, when you fail, when you succeed, and when you lie awake at night replaying the day. Most people assume this voice is just who they are, but in reality, it is something they've been practicing for years, often without realizing it. For many, that voice is harsh. It points out mistakes before effort. It questions worth before progress. It turns small failures into personal verdicts. And the most dangerous part is not what it says, but that you believe it. Here is a moment that happens more often than people admit. A woman stands in front of the mirror early in the morning. The light is unforgiving. She notices her tired eyes and the lines on her face. Without thinking, she says quietly, "You look terrible." She gets dressed, leaves the room, and carries that sentence with her for the rest of the day. Nothing dramatic happens. No breakdown, no tears, but something small closes inside her. That is how inner damage usually works. Not loudly, but consistently. Most people would never allow someone else to speak to them that way every single day. They would leave. They would defend themselves. But when the voice comes from inside, they accept it as truth instead of habit. Happy people are not people who were born with a gentle inner voice. They are people who learned to interrupt the cruel one. They don't fight their thoughts aggressively. They don't pretend everything is positive. Instead, they practice something quieter. Correction. When the mind says, "I'm failing," they respond, "I'm learning." When it says, "I'm not enough," they answer, "I'm still here, and that matters." When it says, "I always mess things up," they pause and ask, "Is that actually true?" This shift may sound small, but it changes everything. Because your inner voice shapes your nervous system, a hostile voice keeps the body in constant tension. A kinder voice signals safety, and safety is where happiness begins. There is a reason self-talk matters so deeply. You hear yourself more than anyone else. Your words become your environment. Over time, people who change their inner dialogue notice something unexpected. Their confidence doesn't come from success. Their calm doesn't come from control. It comes from knowing that even on bad days, they are not at war with themselves. This doesn't mean the voice becomes perfect. It means it becomes supportive. And when the war inside ends, energy returns. Focus sharpens. Emotional weight lightens. Not because life became easier, but because life stopped being fought from the inside. If happiness is a skill, then this is one of its most important practices. Learning to speak to yourself in a way that helps you survive, grow, and stay open. Because peace doesn't begin when the world changes. It begins when the voice inside you finally becomes an ally instead of an enemy. Everyone gets hurt, not in abstract ways, but in personal ones. Promises are broken. Trust is damaged. People leave without explanation. Words are said that can't be taken back. And when that happens, the pain doesn't disappear on its own. It stays. It replays. It waits. Most people believe holding on to that pain is a form of strength. They think letting go means excusing what happened or pretending it didn't matter. So they keep the memory alive, not realizing that what they are protecting is also what is draining them. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. It is not saying the hurt was acceptable. It is not inviting the person back into your life. And it is definitely not forgetting. Forgiveness is a decision to stop carrying pain that no longer serves you. When you don't forgive, the body remembers. Sleep becomes shallow. The mind stays alert. Old conversations replay at the worst moments. Even joy feels unsafe because part of you is still bracing for impact. Happy people understand something quietly powerful. Anger keeps you tied to the moment that hurt you. Forgiveness cuts that tie. There are people who spend years reliving a single betrayal, not because they enjoy the pain, but because they believe holding it proves their loyalty to the truth. But the truth doesn't need suffering to stay real. What happened still happened, even if you choose peace. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is self-respect. When you forgive, you are not handing victory to the person who hurt you. You are reclaiming your own energy. You are choosing to move forward without dragging the past behind you like a weight. This doesn't happen instantly. Sometimes forgiveness begins as distance. Sometimes it begins as silence. Sometimes it begins with one honest sentence. I don't want to feel this heavy anymore. And slowly, something changes. Your chest feels less tight. Your thoughts stop circling. The nervous system relaxes because it no longer has to guard an open wound. Happy people forgive because they value peace more than revenge. They understand that holding anger is like gripping something hot and expecting someone else to feel the burn. Letting go does not erase the lesson. It frees you to use it. Forgiveness is not about the past. It's about the life you still want to live. And when you release what no longer belongs in your hands, you make space for something better. Not because the world became fair, but because you chose not to let one moment define your inner life forever. That is how forgiveness becomes a skill. Not a favor, not an excuse, but a doorway back to peace. One of the quiet reasons people struggle to feel happy is not because their life is falling apart, but because they are rarely fully inside it. Their body is here, but their mind is somewhere else, replaying what already happened or worrying about what might. The mind is good at traveling through time. It revisits old conversations, imagines different outcomes, and rehearses future problems that may never arrive. And while this ability helps us plan and learn, it also pulls us away from the only place where life actually happens. The present moment. When your attention lives in the past, regret grows. When it lives in the future, anxiety takes over. Neither of those states allows peace to settle. Happy people are not people without memories or responsibilities. They simply practice returning. Again and again. They notice when their thoughts drift, and instead of following them, they gently come back to what is happening right now. The feeling of their feet on the ground. The sound of someone speaking. The warmth of a cup in their hands. These details may seem small, but they anchor the nervous system. They tell the body, I am safe here. And safety is the foundation of calm. Most people miss their life not because it wasn't meaningful, but because they were never fully present for it. They eat without tasting. They listen without hearing. They rest without resting. Happy people do something different. When they drink tea, they actually taste it. When they walk, they feel each step. When they are with someone, they give them their attention instead of splitting it between memories and fears. This doesn't mean the mind never wanders. It always will. Presence is not perfection. It is practice. Each time you notice you've drifted and gently return, you strengthen the muscle of awareness. And over time, those moments of return become more natural. The result is not constant joy. It is depth. Moments feel fuller. Conversations feel warmer. Even ordinary days carry a quiet richness because you are actually there to experience them. Life is not lived in yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's worries. It is lived in moments. And if you are not present for those moments, happiness has nowhere to land. So happy people don't wait for a better future to arrive before they feel okay. They learn to arrive in their own life, right here, right now. That is where peace begins. Many people misunderstand gratitude. They think it means pretending everything is fine, or forcing a smile when life is clearly not. Because of that, they dismiss it as shallow or unrealistic. But gratitude, when practiced correctly, is not denial. It is training. Every day, your mind is looking for evidence. Evidence that life is working, or evidence that it is failing. What it finds depends on what it has been trained to notice. Most people wake up already scanning for what is missing. They feel tired, behind, or overwhelmed before the day even begins. Without realizing it, they teach their brain to expect disappointment. Over time, this expectation becomes the default emotional state. Happy people train their attention differently. They don't ignore pain. They don't lie to themselves. They simply refuse to let difficulty erase everything that is still alive, working, and meaningful in the present moment. Gratitude is the practice of redirecting attention, not away from reality, but toward balance. When you notice one small thing that is okay, your nervous system receives a signal of safety. The body relaxes slightly. The mind softens. This shift may feel subtle, but repeated daily, it changes how you experience life. Gratitude is not about saying thank you once in a while. It is about building a habit of seeing the warm meal, the quiet moment, the fact that you woke up, the fact that you can still choose. Happy people understand something essential. When attention is always fixed on lack, even abundance feels empty. But when attention is trained on what remains, resilience grows. This doesn't mean pain disappears. It means pain no longer controls the entire emotional landscape. Over time, people who practice gratitude notice a change. Their problems don't vanish, but their strength returns. Their thoughts become less sharp, less hostile. The inner world feels less crowded by complaint and more open to possibility. Gratitude repairs perspective. It reminds you that even on hard days, not everything is broken. And when the mind stops labeling the entire day as a failure, it becomes easier to keep going. Happy people don't practice gratitude because life is perfect. They practice it because life is fragile. They understand that attention is power, and wherever attention goes, emotion follows. By choosing to notice what is still right, even briefly, they protect their mental space from being consumed by what is wrong. That is why gratitude is not a soft habit. It is a stabilizing one. It doesn't make life easier. It makes life clearer. And clarity is often the first step back to peace. Many people try to think their way out of unhappiness. They analyze, reflect, and search for answers inside their head, not realizing that part of their struggle lives in the body. When the body is tense, tired, and still for too long, the mind rarely feels light or flexible. The mind and the body are not separate systems. They speak to each other constantly. When stress builds, the shoulders rise. When sadness lingers, the body slows. When anxiety takes over, the chest tightens. If the body stays frozen in these patterns, the mind follows. Happy people understand this connection intuitively. They don't wait until they feel motivated to move. They move because they know movement changes how they feel. This doesn't require a gym, special equipment, or perfect discipline. It starts with simple actions: walking outside, stretching in the morning, breathing deeply while standing in the sunlight. These movements send a powerful message to the nervous system. You are not stuck. As the body moves, chemistry shifts. Tension begins to release. Energy starts to circulate. The mind becomes less crowded, not because problems disappeared, but because the body is no longer holding them so tightly. Many people stay unhappy longer than necessary because they wait to feel better before they act. Happy people reverse that order. They act first, trusting that emotion will follow. There is something grounding about physical movement. It pulls attention out of endless thought loops and back into sensation. Each step, stretch, or breath becomes a small anchor in the present moment. Over time, people who move regularly notice more than just physical changes. Their sleep improves, their patience increases, their thoughts become less heavy. Not because life became easy, but because their system learned how to release pressure instead of storing it. Movement is not about performance. It is not about appearance. It is about circulation, of blood, of breath, of energy, of emotion. A body that moves sends a signal of life, and that signal reaches the mind. Happy people protect this habit because they understand something simple and practical. You cannot expect the mind to feel free if the body never gets a chance to release what it carries. Even on difficult days, especially on difficult days, they choose some form of movement. Not to escape discomfort, but to prevent it from settling permanently. This is how movement becomes more than exercise. It becomes a form of self-respect. By moving the body, you remind yourself that change is still possible, that energy still flows, that you are alive inside the moment. And from that place, happiness has room to return. Many people spend their lives chasing comfort. They look for pleasure, distraction, and relief, hoping these things will finally make them feel whole. And for a moment, they do. But pleasure fades quickly. When it does, the emptiness often returns, sometimes deeper than before. Happy people understand a harder truth. Lasting happiness does not come from feeling good all the time. It comes from feeling that your life matters. Meaning is what allows happiness to survive pain. There is a difference between a life that is easy and a life that is meaningful. An easy life can still feel hollow. A meaningful life can feel heavy and still feel worth living. This is not philosophy. It is human reality. A psychiatrist who survived unimaginable suffering once observed something unsettling. People don't break simply because life is painful. They break when they can no longer see a reason to endure the pain. When meaning disappears, even small struggles feel unbearable. But when meaning is present, people find strength they didn't know they had. You can see this clearly in everyday life. Two people can wake up to the same routine, the same job, the same exhaustion. One feels trapped, the other feels useful. The difference is not the work, it's the why behind it. Meaning does not remove hardship, it changes how hardship is carried. When you know why you are doing something, who you are showing up for, what value you are honoring, what promise you are keeping, effort becomes dignified instead of draining. Pain becomes part of a larger story instead of a pointless burden. Happy people don't wait for life to give them meaning. They create it through responsibility, commitment, and care. Sometimes that meaning is large. Often it is quiet. It can be loving someone, building something slowly, staying honest when it's uncomfortable, or simply refusing to give up on yourself. Meaning doesn't require applause. It requires alignment. When your actions reflect what you believe matters, your inner world becomes more stable. Even difficult days feel grounded because they are connected to something larger than momentary emotion. This is why happiness rooted in meaning lasts longer than happiness rooted in pleasure. Pleasure asks, "How do I feel right now?" Meaning asks, "Why am I still moving forward?" Happy people choose the second question. They understand that life will include struggle, loss, and uncertainty. But when those experiences are held within purpose, they don't destroy the spirit. They strengthen it. Meaning does not promise an easy life. It offers a worthwhile one. And when your life feels worthwhile, happiness no longer needs perfect conditions to exist. It becomes quieter, deeper, and far more resilient, because it is anchored not in comfort, but in purpose. Happiness was never meant to be loud, perfect, or constantly exciting. It was never meant to look good from the outside. Real happiness is quieter than that. It's the calm that comes when you stop fighting yourself. It's the steadiness you feel when your life makes sense to you, even if it doesn't impress anyone else. You don't need a perfect past to move forward. You don't need a flawless plan to begin. You don't even need to feel confident right now. You only need to keep practicing. Each time you choose presence over pressure, kindness over criticism, meaning over distraction, you are training something powerful. You are teaching your mind how to live without running. Some days will still feel heavy. That doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. And humans don't build happiness in a moment. They build it through how they carry moments. So take a breath, stay with yourself, keep going, one small habit at a time. You're not late, you're learning. And that, quietly, is where real happiness grows.